want to welcome you this morning. I know that there are a few first-time visitors here. We're not going to make you stand up and embarrass you, but I want you to know on behalf of the rest of the staff and the family here at Morningside, we're glad you're here, and we're thankful that you've joined us this morning, and hope that you enjoy yourself this morning as we take a look at what God's Word has to say. So there's no sermon notes in your program this morning. I apologize for that. We are actually just continuing the notes that you had last week, so if you have those with you, stuffed in your Bible somewhere or something, you can pull those out because the last 4 points are on there. But otherwise, if you didn't use your offering envelope, you could use that to scribble some notes on or whatever. But what I want to do this morning for just a couple minutes is recap the points that we talked about last week so that we can kind of get our minds back into where we're at. We're in our new series called Awesome, and we're talking about marriage, relationships, children, families, our relationship with God. And so last week we talked about marriage specifically, why marriage matters. And we said that marriage, there's all kinds of relationships in the world. But marriage is defined by God as between a man and a woman. And so we talked about why God says that marriage matters. And we said that marriage matters for the connection of men and women. And we used the verse 1 Corinthians 11:11. In God's plan, men and women need each other. And so we said, and then the second thing we said was that marriage matters for the multiplication of the human race. God said in Genesis 1:27, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. And I think I said we haven't had any trouble doing that, right? So number 3 was marriage matters for the protection of children. Proverbs 14:26 says, those who obey and respect the Lord have a secure fortress. Their children have a place of refuge and security. The 4th point was for the protection of our character. That's why marriage matters, for the perfection of our character. Romans 12 said, love sincerely. Hold on to what is good. Be devoted to each other like a loving family. Excel in showing respect for each other. That's not just showing respect for people of like mind in this room. It's excel in showing respect for each other outside the doors of this place. Number 5 was marriage matters for the construction of society. Proverbs 14:34 says, righteousness lifts up a nation, but sin brings disgrace to any society. Number 6, we said for marriage matters for the reflection of our union with Christ. Ephesians chapter 5 kind of defines that for us. Paul said, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So those are 6 reasons why marriage matters. And some of you are thinking, man, how come he couldn't preach it that fast last week, right? So covered the whole thing in 5 minutes or less. But those are 6 reasons why marriage matters. And so what I wanted to do this morning is invite Winnie up here to join me for a few minutes. And this is going to, for those of you who are diehard, give it to me straight out of the Bible, verse by verse. That's not what this morning is. But we're going to get outside the box a little bit this morning and just have a conversation a little bit up here and share some of our thoughts on the seasons of marriage. So in a society that, doesn't like marriage, the question that we asked last week and that we're asking again this week is, how do you fight for your marriage? Because there's nothing in society that's encouraging you to stay married. Everything around you is encouraging you to walk out. So how do you fight for your marriage? How do you make it through those tough times? Winnie and I have been married for 14 years. We've actually been friends, I would say best friends, for 24 years. We met the very first day of high school back in, 1993. My math is not working this morning. I think it's 1993. So
how old we are.
It tells you how old we are too, I guess. But so what I wanted to do is have her come help us this morning, and because we've gone through a lot of seasons in 14 short years, and I know there's a lot of people in here that have been married far longer than us and could share stories and wisdom with us. And we talk to people all the time that have been married longer than us that can share insights and wisdom of how God's worked in their lives and how God worked out these different situations. But what we want to do is just kind of share about some of the seasons that we've gone through this morning, and ups and downs, good times and bad times. We've been through pain, we've been through joy, we've been through lots of fun, we've been through lots of hurt. So what she's going to do this morning is we're just going to kind of go back and forth, and we're both firstborns. We both like to have control of things. And we're both type A. So we've never shared the stage before. And I'm not usually really good at sharing. And
Me either.
And she's not either, but she might tell you she is. But yeah, so we kind of do this sometimes. But we love each other very much. And I'm thankful for her in my life. And so we're going to try to share the stage this morning and go back and forth a little bit. And and share some thoughts with you guys on marriage and some scriptures that go with it. And so we're going to talk about the seasons of marriage. There's 4 of those. And so I'm going to turn it over to Winnie and let her kind of get us started with talking about the seasons of marriage.
We wanted to use the metaphor of the seasons to talk about marriage because, as Scott said, marriages don't ever stay the same. They're always changing. So we're going to use the spring season, to talk about a very busy time in your marriage, a time when everything's super busy. You're kind of like ships passing in the night. It's just this super intense kind of busyness. We're going to use the season of summer to talk about that really amazing good time in your marriage where everything is going well. We're going to talk about fall, and that's the season where there's some kind of change going on in your life or in your marriage. And then we're going to talk about winter, and that is when the bottom falls out, when everything just seems to fall apart. So when we had premarital counseling, the counselor told us that we would struggle in 5 areas. And those 5 areas were communication, sex, in-laws, parenting, and money. And I'm pretty sure that within the first month of our marriage, we covered all 5.
It probably didn't take that long.
Yeah, probably not that long, yeah. First couple of weeks. So what we really wanted to talk to you about and use the seasons for is to show that we've gone through these seasons, and every relationship is going to go through these seasons.
Right. Yeah, and spring, as she said, spring is the season of busyness. And busyness, I think, is one of the number 1 destroyers of marriage because we get too busy for each other. You don't have time to talk. You don't have time to think. You don't have time for sex. You don't have time to just be together because you're busy going around in a million different places, a million different directions. You've got schedules to keep. You've got kids to keep up with. You've got work things to keep up with and parties to go to and whatever the case might be. So you're going in a million different directions.
Yeah, and we trick ourselves into thinking that busyness is only going to last for a short time. Like in 3 months, it's going to get easier, or that our schedules are somehow miraculously going to be different. And that if we can just hang on for X period of time, then we won't be as busy. But I think we all know that isn't true, because the problem with the season of busyness is it can often turn into a pattern. And before we know it, that busyness pattern is a lifestyle. And if you're not careful, that habit is the very thing that will keep you from having the time with the people that matter the most to you.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that we've done in our marriage, maybe suggestions or tips for you guys when you're in the spring of life, when you're really, really busy, because you can't let that busyness push out the importance of your relationship with each other. So, and by the way, when you have preschoolers, I know that's like spring training, the ultimate spring training, because you're super, super busy. You're constantly chasing them around. We have a 2-year-old at home, and she keeps us on our toes and running around. So there's always something in life that keeps you really, really busy. But one of the things that we say is make time for fun. And that's, we look around at the world around us and we think everybody's making time for fun. But the reality is we don't always make a lot of time for fun together. And you saw that in the video, right? They do things. The guy liked playing his video games, but they weren't making time for fun together. So we say make time for fun. And one of the phrases that Winnie and I have had since early in our marriage that actually was shared with us by somebody else was this. It was divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually. I'll say that again. Divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually. And divert daily means that you do something fun. You find something fun to do. So
right.
maybe...
So watch a favorite TV show. You can play a game together, walk on the beach, go for a drive. If you have to lock yourselves in the bedroom to get a few minutes, then you need to do it. But basically take a time out. And like our video just showed, the only rule for this is that you need to unplug. No phones, no computers, time alone together. Yeah,
actually, I've done marriage counseling with 2 different couples now that have had issues like what you saw on the video.
For real.
I had a couple sit in my office and tell me that they never talk anymore. And I said, well, are you guys ever home together? Oh, yeah, we're home every night together. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't talk? And she said, well, he texts me when I'm in the bedroom, and I text him from the bedroom. And she said, I said, well, why don't you put an end to that? And she said, I can't, because if I try to talk to him, he'll text me the response. And she said, so there's no, and so I got the other one in and we had that conversation. But I've actually done counseling twice with couples that the other couple said, well, we go to dinner, but we don't talk. What do? We text each other across the table. I'm not kidding you. I can't make this stuff up, right? So it's important that you communicate and that's why I showed the video. I love that video because when I saw it, I was like, oh man,
It's true.
you know, that's where people are sometimes.
Yeah.
So the second thing that we said is withdraw weekly. Take a weekly day off and then abandon annually. Have an annual vacation. So Winnie is going to talk about our day off for a minute.
Right. So our day off, because he preaches, our weekends are full. It's not a time for relaxing for us. He's at the main campus Saturday night, and then he's here Sunday morning. So by Monday, he's completely wiped out. And then Monday are our typical days off. But no matter how busy we get during the week with our schedules and the kids and all of that, we always make sure that we take a day off.
And this is important because if you remember what God said in Exodus chapter 11, verses 8 and 9, what does he say? He says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it what? Holy. He says, 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day you should rest, right? We're to rest. God commanded that. It's not something like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll get a day off. And God said, you've got to find a way. You've got to make a way to have a day where you set aside for me, for rest, for recharging your batteries. Our bodies are wired that way. If you go week after week after week without a day off, you know you get sick or you get a head cold or you just get exhausted and you can't get out of bed. So it's important to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor, the seventh day you should rest. So.
And then we always take a vacation. Sometimes if you're married, you can think back and think, we haven't had a vacation in ages. And it's true that couples can definitely get into a rut where it's either finances or your schedule, and you just can't do it. But the thing that we've been intentional about is making time for a vacation, even if it's a staycation. Because money can be tough, can be tight at times. And even if you just stay home and watch Netflix and eat cereal and milk, the point is to intentionally make time for each other. And in this season where things are very busy in this spring, you have to look for ways to do that. So turn off the phone, turn off the computer, look into each other's eyes, and it may not be the 2 hours like when you were dating. But the point is to take time to intentionally focus and connect with each other. We don't want you to be that couple that we talked about sitting at the restaurant, like talking to each other on their cell phones. We don't want that for you because God has something so much better for you and so much better for your marriage. And the other thing we wanted to say about vacation time, we aren't talking about vacation time with your kids. And vacation time with kids is awesome and it's important and there is absolutely a place for that. But that isn't what we're talking about here. We're talking about vacation time together because kids can and often do become a distraction just as much as a cell phone can, just as much as social media can. We don't want you to hide behind your children. Please don't use your children as an excuse to not take care of your marriage. We need to be intentional and on purpose about your time together.
And I know some parents are probably panicking because they're like, we don't leave our kids. We're not talking about going away for a week or 2 weeks on some long cruise and leaving your kids at home, okay? Or doing what the mom just did this past week. Did you hear about Germany mom? Yeah, she
left her 4 kids at home and
got
went
on
to
a plane
Germany.
And went to Germany. Yeah.
By themselves.
12 years old was the oldest that she left at home. That was this week, by the way.
We're not talking about that.
And a neighbor tipped off the cops.
Please don't leave your children at home.
Please don't leave your kids unattended at home.
No.
Yeah. What we're getting at is, like, who does that, right?
She does.
We're talking. Stay on the script. Okay.
Right here.
All right. So we're talking about, sometimes maybe it's just one night away.
Yeah.
Get a sitter for a night. Maybe you have in-laws in town or something, and maybe you don't trust your in-laws. My mom keeps our kids up till 1 or 2 in the morning. So you have to decide if that's right for your children.
Or right for you.
But we take it because it gets us out of the house, right? So.
You don't have to go far away.
Sometimes it's just one night away,
right?
Just to recharge and reconnect with each other. It doesn't have to be a long period of time where you have to go and get anxious about leaving your kids for for a long period of time. But here's the thing, you have to make time for dating. You have to make time to go on dates. When you get married, we say date your mate. Okay? The problem is a lot of people stop dating once they get married, but you need to continue that process. Listen, what you did to get married is what you have to do to continue to stay married the rest of your life, okay? You don't get to just stop that when you get married. Be like, all right, check that off the list. Now let's move on, right? No, it doesn't work like that. What you did to get married, and all the women should be saying amen, right? Guys, what you did to get married is the stuff that you should continue doing as you continue on so that your marriage stays strong and healthy. I said this on Facebook not long ago, and it got quite a response, but I said if there were more courting in marriage, there would be fewer marriages in court. If there were more courting in marriage, there would be fewer marriages in court. So date your mate, do fun things, and do creative things, and just have fun together.
Yeah, the goal is to be one together. Matthew 19:4-5, and Scott said this last week. I was thinking Christmas. Why was I thinking Christmas? I don't know. Last Sunday, Scott talked about Matthew 19:4, and where it talks about God creating male and female and saying to them, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So from the minute that you say yes, the minute that you commit yourself in marriage, in God's eyes, you're one flesh. The whole goal of your relationship then from that point on is to continue to build in that oneness and unity. When the season that we're talking about, the season of spring where everything is super busy, in that season you have to be very intentional about your time together.
So in the first season, the busy season that we're talking about this morning, here's the assignment for this week. If you're married, I don't care how busy you are, if you're married, go out on a date this week.
Are you paying for everybody to go?
No, I'm not. I'm not paying for everybody to go, but
sorry, I tried.
I will do something for you. If you have kids, this is what we're going to do for you. On Friday night from 6 to 11 o'clock, right here, you can drop your kids off from 6 to 11. We have adults that will watch your children for you for free. We will feed them pizza. We will feed them popcorn. We'll feed them all kinds of Coke and soda to send them home super happy. Okay? We'll show them movies and all kinds of stuff and get them really amped up so that when you pick them up, you can deal with them. Anyway, no. 6 to 11, the only thing that we need you to do is we need you to sign up today in the foyer. You don't have to pay anything. It's completely free to you. We believe this is so important for your marriage that if you have children, you can drop them off here from 6 to 11 on Friday night. Because babysitting for us, that's one of the most expensive parts of going out on a date. Like we spend more on babysitting typically than we do on the movie or dinner that we go to. Yeah, so we're trying to help you guys out, but we need to have at least 5 or 10 kids here to make it worth asking the adults to come here and do this for you guys. So we've got the adults all lined up. We're ready and we're excited about this. So 6 to 11 this Friday, and when you get your tickets for Chris August after the service, you can sign up for that right there. They've got the sign up sheet out there. You can see Emily after the service. So that's my command to you as your pastor. Go on a date with your spouse this week. Get out of the busyness. Yeah, see?
And all the girls say, yay, date night.
So, all right, so now we've got the summer season. What do you want to say about that?
We talked about spring. We're going to move to summer. And it's the second season that we've observed in our relationship and other couples' relationship that they tend to go through. And summer is one of those wonderful times, and everybody loves summer. Everything's great. There's pools, barbecues, hanging out with your friends. And if you have kids, it's a much more relaxed kind of schedule. And you look forward to summer all year long, and at least I do. I love. And
then you look forward to them going back to school.
Yeah. I really do. I love summer, and so there's periods in your relationship where everything is going really great. Your health is good. You've got enough money. You're not struggling with finances. You're getting along great with each other, and it just feels like you're in this beautiful, like easy breezy time in your marriage. The unfortunate part about that is that it seems to only last a short amount of time. They're so short. But when you're in one of those seasons where everything is going really well, that's the time to invest in your relationship. It's the time to plant. That's the time to store up. Ecclesiastes 3 talks about this type of thing. It talks about seasons. A lot of you know this because there's a song about this. But for every time there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. There's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. And that's what we're talking about today. In summer, that is the time to plant. It goes on, verse 4, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to be silent and a time to speak.
Guys,
and
take note of that one. Time to be silent,
that's
right?
probably...
Yeah. And a time to speak.
I think anybody that's been married for 5 seconds can tell you that there are times when you should and
this is my time to be silent right now, yeah. So
be silent. No. And there are times to speak. So listen, guys, listen. Don't wait for the wheels to fall off the bus before you decide to get help. There are some people out there whose idea of car maintenance is to wait until the engine falls out on the highway before they decide to have their car looked at. And that's the way that some people approach their marriage relationships. You think right now, oh, it's kind of bad, but oh, I'm sure it'll get better. Or, yes, that's kind of annoying, that kind of bothers me, but, we'll just kind of sweep it under the rug. But it's not the way to handle it. Instead of waiting for things to get horrendous, in the summer season, when everything is beautiful and going well, that's the time to invest in your marriage, invest in some marriage counseling, invest in some seminars, maybe some books, invest in those nights away alone that Scott and I were talking about.
And I really like what she's saying here. What she said about things when they're going good. That's the time to do the maintenance, to do the marriage tune-up, to get the counseling while things are good. And, in a relationship, no relationship stands still. You're always either going to be moving closer together or you're going to be moving further apart. It's the same way in our walk with Christ. You're either moving towards Christ or you're moving away from Christ. Okay? It doesn't just stagnate. So if you're growing closer together intentionally, if you're not growing closer together intentionally, then you're growing apart from each other. And it's not good for us to be growing apart. So get marriage counseling while things are going good, not when everything has hit rock bottom and there's no hope. People come to me all the time and they say, Pastor, just want to let you know we're getting a divorce. And I'm like, well, what about, do you want to talk about it? No, we already decided. There's nothing else you can do. Well, could we have talked about it? Well, we maybe, but we didn't do that. So don't wait until you're at that rock bottom place. When things are going well, that's the time to do those tune-ups. Just like when your car is running well, take it in and get a checkup so that you know that it's going to keep running well. It's the same thing in a marriage. Do those tune-ups. And, some people say, well, I can't afford marriage counseling. Well, first of all, I'll say this. Your pastors will do as much as we can to help you for free. That's why we're here. Yeah. But if you need professional counseling, that's another story. But listen, I would still say to you, I can't afford it isn't an excuse when it comes to your marriage. You can't afford not to do it. Yeah. You have to invest in those good times. You have to pour into those good times. You have to plant in those good times.
Right. That's the time to really send your roots deep, both in the Lord and in your relationship. You need to, because we all know that those good times aren't going to last. The hard times are going to come. They're inevitable. They're going to. So if you can send your roots deep now when things are beautiful and wonderful, then it's a really wise decision.
One other thing that I'll say here is I think a lot of marriages die from boredom, right? People just get bored with each other. So you've got to keep it creative. You've got to do fun things. And the summer season in marriage is a great time for you to go out to do that. So,
all right. So we talked about spring, and that's when things are really busy. You have to be intentional about connecting with each other. Summer are those rare short periods of time when things are going really well. Those are the times to bank for the future. The fall is a season of change. We don't get much fall here in Florida, but there are periods of change in every marriage. So maybe you've moved, you've had a new baby, maybe you've had 5 new babies, maybe you've taken on a new job, but these are all major life changes and they do require major adjustments. That adjustment can easily cause stress in a marriage, but the changes are really good. So sometimes we fight against the change because it disrupts our lives. We don't like change, we don't like to be disrupted, but if we can look at that through the lens of it might be difficult right now, but in the long run, we're going to be so glad that we took that job or made the move or made the decision to buy the house. And all of that change can really be good for you. So what I would tell you in those seasons, you need to be willing to adjust. Don't get too stressed out about it, and look at things through the lens of the long term.
You know, if your marriage is going to last for 30, 40, 50 plus years, then you're going to go through enormous amounts of change during that time. Some of you have already gone through that kind of change, and you know it. You've been through these seasons more than once. We're not the same people we were when we got married. Because if you stay with the same person for life, you're going to grow, and you don't stay the same. So your marriage will succeed or fail by your ability to learn how to deal with the change that comes in life, and to realize that change can be a good thing. We know change can be a bad thing too, but it can be a good thing, and it can keep you from boredom in your marriage and in your life. But let's talk about a kind of change for a minute, or things that don't change, maybe I should say, things that don't change in your life, like your personality. That's not going to change, right?
No.
2 type A personalities, probably not going to change. So,
And when you look over at the person that you're married to and you go, you're never going to change. And believe me, every relationship,
I've never heard that.
Every relationship hits those moments, those kind of stuck places where you realize that this person that you're married to has some habits that drive you absolutely insane. And the likelihood that that will change is very slim. So what do we do about that? How do we deal with things that are not going to change?
Well, we've been married 14 years and we've never had a fight. No, I'm kidding. We've been married 14 years, and even today we're totally different.
Oh, and I do have a story about that.
See, I don't even get to finish my thought. Go ahead. Story time.
We were driving home from Ohio. We travel back and forth to Ohio fairly frequently in the car with all of our children, yes. And we were driving home from Ohio. I think it was probably, 5 years into our marriage or whatever. And this is a 18 to 21 hour drive. We were towards the end.
We do it nonstop.
Yeah, we usually do. We drive it straight through. So we were towards the end of our drive. We were in Georgia, I think, and we were having a conversation about
favorite foods or
favorite
something.
Foods
or foods our moms made.
Or something like that. So Scott says to me, "Oh, my mom makes Spam and it's delicious." And I said, "That's
so
nasty." And he says to me, "No, it's wonderful. She flours it and fries it, and you eat it with ketchup."
No, mustard.
Even better. And I said, "That's nasty. I will never eat Spam." And he says to me, "Well, you should just try it. You don't know if you would like it or not." And I said, "No, I will never eat Spam." And that conversation
got us home. From Georgia.
Yeah, that conversation, I am absolutely not kidding, was one of the worst fights we have had in our marriage, because we were both going to die on the hill of Spam. Absolutely. And yeah.
I was raised with you try everything once, and no. I thought she should try it once. I tried the stuff she wanted me to try. So anyway, so that conversation got us home from Georgia. That was a long, not fun conversation.
But we were not going to we will never see that the same way, ever.
The kids even asked if we still loved each other. So
they did. Yes, we just don't like Spam.
Yeah.
I don't.
So so how do you deal with those things, right?
I'm going to have somebody come up and say, "You know what? Spam is really good. You should try it."
Yeah, no, we've never eaten Spam in our home, so it was just one of those childhood memories. I don't know, but here are 3 or 4 suggestions for how to deal with some of those things. Not how to deal with Spam specifically, but how to deal with some of those things. One of them is stop using incompatibility as an excuse. People say, we're just so incompatible, we're going to divorce. Listen, I don't believe in that term. The word incompatibility is a word that was made up by divorce attorneys to justify divorce. The truth is, you're not compatible with anybody. Did you know that? You will never meet anybody that you're compatible with, because nobody agrees with everything that you do. And nobody agrees with everything that you like, obviously, right? So no matter who you marry, you are incompatible. There's another word for incompatibility when people use it in that sense. The other word for incompatibility is called selfishness. When people say, we're incompatible, they come to my office and they say, we're incompatible, so we're going to divorce. I have 2 words for them: grow up. Grow up. Because listen, given the right situation, if you choose to love, you can fall in love with anybody, and you can stay in love with anybody. That's another thing that's important. 1 Corinthians 13, Paul talks about it. He says, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It doesn't dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. He says, love doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. Did you realize, did you pay attention to what he's saying there? Not one of those things is feeling related. It's all action related. Love is patient. That's an action. You have to take a step to be patient. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. Those are all actions. Love, listen, love is a choice, and we need to realize that this morning. Love is a choice. People think love is a feeling. Love is not a feeling. Love is a choice. Love creates feelings. It can actually create great feelings, but love is a choice.
And in a relationship, one of the things that causes people to lose those love and feelings is because they don't know what to do with the difference.
Right?
There is a song.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, Righteous
Gun.
Brothers. Thank you. There you go. So she remembers it from Top Gun
Yes.
because Tom Cruise is in it, not
Yes.
because of the Righteous Brothers. Okay. Yeah. So when you I should stick to my script, right?
Yes.
All right. So so when you're in that dating period of life, you know, when we're in that dating period of life, what do? We look our best. We act our best. Shoot, you even smell your best, right? And after you get married, you're going to discover that there are parts of that person that you don't like. So you've got to decide whether you're going to love somebody in spite of themselves. Because there are things when you get married about your mate that you're never going to change no matter how much you try. You're never going to be able to change it no matter the arguments you have over spam or whatever else. There's nothing that's going to change some of those things. So you've got to decide, am I going to force them to change before I love them? Because that's not real love. You have to accept those things that are real when they're not always the ideal. Because a great marriage, listen to me carefully, a great marriage is the union of 2 great forgivers. Did you get that? A great marriage is the union of 2 great forgivers. That's how you have a great marriage.
We decided that we were going to be happily incompatible for the rest of our lives. We will never be completely compatible. We will never be exactly alike. I will never eat spam. But we are really content to be happily incompatible. So spring is busy. You have to be intentional. Summer is beautiful. It's the time to invest for your future. During fall, you're going to have change, and you need to look at that change through the lens of the long term. And when you run into the places where things are not going to change, then that's the opportunity to grow in acceptance and to decide that you're going to be happily incompatible.
So the last one that we're going to talk about this morning is winter, which will be here if we don't speed up a little bit. And it's my fault. I'm the one getting off script, not her. Okay, it's my fault. I'll take it. And I'll hear about it at home. But the season of winter, right? If you're married for any length of time, you're going to go through winter in your relationship. That's the season of loss, or that's the season of grief, or that's the season of trials and difficulties. It could be anywhere from something like an affair that happens in your marriage, or a betrayal, or maybe it's a death of a close loved one, or a bankruptcy, or cancer, or maybe you have a prodigal child that winds up in jail or prison, or makes some choices that you wish they wouldn't have made. And those things absolutely break your heart. And we've been through some of those own circumstances in our own marriage, and Winnie's going to talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah, in our case, we've just gone through a 4-year winter that for me was truly the deepest and darkest place that I have ever been. My oldest daughter is from my first marriage, and she decided about 4 years ago that she was going to leave our home and go live with her dad. And in most cases, it's very common. Many children from broken marriages decide to leave one house and go see what it's like at the other home. But what we went through was not that. Elizabeth did not go gentle into that good night. when she left, the way that it was done left me so physically, mentally, and spiritually drained that there were truly days that I did not know if I could physically put one foot in front of the other. There's an old hymn that says, "I'll strengthen thee, help thee, and cause thee to stand, upheld by my righteous, omnipotent hand." And the only way that I could stand on my feet some of those days was because Jesus Christ himself caused me to stand. Because I had lost my child. I had lost my first baby. And there was little to no communication with her over those years. The meetings and the phone calls with her were very few and far between. They were always one-sided. I did not know her day-to-day activities. I didn't know if she was sick or if she was well. I had to watch from a distance her go through her teenage years. And as other moms and dads were going through like milestones of sweet 16s and driver's permits and things like that, I only felt this hole because I was constantly reminded of what I did not have. And through that time, a lot of times, and if I have spoken to you, I joke about how Scott is, about how I'm a kite, and Scott kind of anchors me at the bottom of the string and keeps me from sort of flying off into the great blue yonder.
It's all that spam I ate.
Yeah, yeah, probably. But he absolutely keeps me grounded. He knows how much slack to give me, and he knows when to tell me that it's time to reel it in. And during this storm that we went through, he absolutely was my anchor. He was my sounding board. He was my shoulder to cry on. And I have to be completely honest with you guys. There were days that I went through the last 4 years where I could not physically even open my Bible. I was so grief-stricken that I couldn't even do it. And those were the days that God used Scott to be Jesus' hands and feet to me. And so in that winter, in our winter, God drew us closer together than we had ever been. We developed an intimacy in our marriage that would not exist if we had not walked through that winter season. Nobody understands what I went through better than Scott does because he walked that road with me. Nobody knows the effects that season had on my life better than Scott does because of that, because he walked that through with me, he's uniquely qualified to speak into those areas of grief and pain in my life. And I think right now, my greatest plea to those of you that are in that winter, you're married and you're in that winter, do not allow the devil to tear you apart because that is what he wants to do. You are each other's greatest comforters. You are each other's greatest ally. Nobody understands what you are going through better than the person that God gave you to walk through that with you. You need to run to each other and not away.
And you know, a lot of people, when those winters come, winters are tough. If you're from up north, you know what winter is like. You don't see the sun for months, right? I lived up north for 5 years. I shoveled snow. I, did the whole ice thing and all that other. It's not fun, right? And it can be depressing when you don't see the sun for that amount of time and things like that. But a lot of people, when those winters come, they start looking for ways out. And it's tough, and it's easy to want to run away. But one of the things that we decided long before any of our problems or our disagreements in our marriage was that divorce was not going to be an option. And I didn't have this in my notes, but I'll tell you why it's important to rely on God and stick together. We prayed for Elizabeth through the entire time that she was gone. We missed her greatly. We prayed for her constantly. We had no idea what was going on in her life, but God was speaking to her as well. And at the end of May, actually Mother's Day weekend, she called on Friday of Mother's Day weekend, called Winnie and said, "Mom, if it's okay, could I come back home?" And all the prayers, God brought us out of that winter, right? Yeah.
And that was God. That was absolutely God.
But listen, if we had divorced in that winter time when it was difficult, when it was really hard, what stable home would she have had to come home to? It wouldn't have been there. She would have found out that the stability that she was seeking, that she was trying to come home to, wasn't there any longer. But because we kept our eyes focused on God and not the problem, and we gave the problem to God, and we stuck together through it and kept our eyes on Him, He brought us through that winter. stronger and better than we were before. So why didn't we divorce? Because we took our vow to God seriously and still do. And we stick through those tough times and we work things out. And, people have asked us before, have you ever considered divorce? No. Murder, maybe, but not divorce, So...
Yeah, and couples that go through the kind of winter that we're talking about, or really any other kind of winter, and they stick it out with each other when the bottom falls out, when you're really not sure that you can forgive one more time, and you're really not, you think that it might actually be better if you just start over. When you make a choice in the summer that we were talking about, when times are beautiful, if you make a choice in the summer that divorce is not an option, and you stick it out in the winter, the level of intimacy that develops, there is nothing equal to that.
Yeah, and when you're in the middle of winter, it's tough because it's dark, it's emotional, it's lonely. There's all kinds of hard feelings that go through that, and you say, I don't like this, and everything in you wants to back out and say, let's just put a top on it and go back to that fake intimacy that we had, that surface level intimacy. But listen, if you'll hang in there, in that eventually you'll run out of energy, you'll run out of words, you'll run out of hurt and pain and tears. And really, that's where she had gotten to after 4 years. It was kind of like there wasn't a lot of pain and tears anymore. It was just kind of this numbness almost. And you'll come out, if you'll stick with it, you'll come out on the other side in true intimacy with not just with God, but with your partner, with your spouse. So as we wrap up this morning, and Ari's going to come back, let me just talk to each of you for a minute as a different group. When he's done talking, would you give her a hand this morning for joining me up here this morning? I say she's done talking. I might find out otherwise, but some of you grew up in homes and the marriage didn't last, and it brought a lot of pain to you, and for that I would say I'm sorry. But listen, today I would encourage you to make a decision that you're going to break that cycle, that you're going to start a new legacy for your family name, that you're going to make it, and that your children are going to make it, because divorce is not going to be an option for you. Maybe you were in a marriage and it failed. You know what? We love you. We're grateful for you. There's grace in this place. What matters is not where you've been. What matters is the direction that your feet are pointed right now. Are your feet pointed towards Christ? Are your eyes on Jesus Christ? If you're not married, I would ask you this morning to make a commitment that when you do marry, that it'll be for life. It's not as long as we both shall love. It's not I love you until it gets hard. It's because, and it's not any of that, because when you're in pain, that's all you can really think about, right? About, I'm in so much pain right now. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have the love that I had anymore. You have no idea how many other people it's going to affect if you break that commitment and that vow that you made before God. If Winnie and I had separated in those winter months of marriage and said, you know what, this just isn't worth it. It's just too much work. It's too hard. You wouldn't be sitting here right now. This all happened a few months before we were planning to launch the West Campus. There would be no Morningside West. So you don't know how your decisions, the choices that you make, are going to affect somebody else. So it's not about you. You've got to think about your commitments and the vows that you take. I would say that if you're not married, say, I'm going to make a commitment. I don't care how bad it gets. It's not an option. We're going to work through all of the things that come along, even if it kills us. And I'll tell you this, if you're in a marriage, make a commitment to stay in that marriage this morning. It's worth it. I promise you it's worth it. There's great joy that comes from that long-term relationship. The joy of growing old together and knowing somebody deeply and perfectly and intimately and that strength that it gives you. So just to recap, why does marriage matter? Why does God say marriage matters? It matters because He uses it for the connection of men and women. He uses it for the multiplication of the human race, for the protection of our children and the other children around the world, for the perfection of our character. She's made me a better Christ follower. I hope that I have done the same for her as we've encouraged each other in the Lord, as Scripture tells us to do as brothers and sisters in Christ. Marriage matters for the construction of society. It matters because it's a reflection of our union with Christ. So here's the thing. You're going to go through those spring seasons when everything's busy and you don't feel like you have time for each other. You have to be intentional about making that time for each other. You're you're going to go through summer times where things are perfect and you're loving life and things are great. Maybe you're there now. Maybe you just came out of one of those times. But when you're in those moments, you have to take the time to invest in each other, invest in your marriage, invest in the relationship so that it can grow stronger and those roots can go deeper. Fall brings some change. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But whether it's good or bad, if we keep our eyes on Christ, He can grow us through that time. Because we know that even though things die in the fall, new life comes in the spring, right? Christ comes back. Those trees don't stay dead. They spring new life after a season. And so it's important that we stick through those seasons of change with each other because there's something even better and more beautiful on the other side waiting for us. And in those winter times when you go through loss and grief and struggles and trials, keep your eyes focused on Christ. Rely on your spouse or your partner to get you through those times, to be the encouragement that you need. And make that commitment that says, you know what, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how hard it gets, we're sticking together because we love each other and we made a vow and a commitment, not just before men, but before God. We're going to see this through. And if you'll do that, He'll grow you together. You'll grow to enjoy life 20, 30, 40, 50 years together and more as the Lord allows and provides. It's been great to be with you this morning. Winnie, do you have any last things you want to say before we pray?
It's a privilege to serve you here in this place. We love you, and we are very thankful for each and every one of you. We are so grateful for the extended family that we have found here. Thank you for being the church that you are.
We love you guys. And if you noticed, we hadn't taken the offering this morning, and we've kept you a long time, so we're not going to. I was the talker, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I'll take the blame. See how this works? Yeah, okay. So one last lesson. So the ushers are at the door. If you have your offering that you'd like to give back to God this morning, we promise we'll use it to further His kingdom. And some of it will go to the folks in Puerto Rico as well. And so you can drop that with the ushers this morning. But let me pray as we close it out this morning. Lord Jesus, we love you. We thank you for the patience that these folks have had this morning in hearing your word and just listening to your voice this morning, Lord. I pray that you would be with them this week as they work on their marriages and their relationships, Lord Jesus. I pray that you'll help them to take advantage of that date night and get some quality time together, Lord. Lord, thank you for an awesome church. Thank you for the privilege that it is to serve each and every person here this morning. And I pray that you'll work in each person's lives and relationships this week and in the weeks to come as they grow closer to you and closer together. We love you, Jesus. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys. We love you. Can't wait to see you next week as we continue the series.